Thanks everyone for joining. My name is Paul Bayless and I'm a retired PwC partner, but currently serving on the Michigan State Board of Accountancy, also on the Ethics Committee of the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy, and also serving as an executive in residence at MSU. This session was originated through a discussion with Miles Stern from Wayne State. Miles was looking for a bit more information on the CPA evolution, changes to the CPA exam that were coming up, just to make sure that the college professors were up to speed on what are the expectations, what's the timing, and what things might be out there in terms of participation in task forces and other events that might help them make sure they understand what they need to teach in order to be ready for the CPA exam coming up when the changes are put in place. We'd like to run through the presentation in about 30 to 45 minutes or so, and then we hope to answer any questions after that. So if you could please either hold your questions or use the chat function, and I'll try to moderate a bit at the end of the session to get some questions and answers put out. The two presenters today are Dan Dustin, who's the Vice President of NASBA, and Anna Howard, who is with the AICPA. And let me just hand it off to Dan, and you guys can introduce yourselves and then take it away from there. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. It's great to be with you today. We've done a number of these sessions around the country. It's really been great to do the outreach and get some feedback. So like Paul said, we're going to spend, about 40 minutes or so going through the slide deck, and then be happy to answer questions and provide updates as we go. Anna?
Thank you, Dan. Thank you for having us. If you hear a dog barking in the background, that's the side effect of working remotely. There is a cat strutting its stuff in front of the window, probably. But I wanted to talk to you today about how it came about, what we mean by CPA evolution, and where we got to where we are right now and where we go from here. So the conversation started about 3 years ago when we realized that technological innovation, as you all know, is impacting the profession. It is creating new marketplace demands and creating new opportunities for the CPAs, both in terms of the types of services they perform and in how those services are delivered. And there were also noticed the trends in firm hiring that changed our thinking. So I want to cover all three here. So as you know, technology is changing how we practice. Emerging technologies are coming up every day. And as a profession, we should be embracing and leveraging the technologies as they emerge. Even if, in my not that long of a career, but when I started as an auditor at PwC, a lot of processes that are automated right now were manual, sending out confirmations, pulling invoices. We were hiring people for data entry, things like that. Now there are tools that can process those confirmations for you. There are tools that can read contracts for you and extract the appropriate data. It's called data mining. There are tools that can read all of the client's invoices. That was my last job in corporate finance. Instead of hiring people to enter the invoices, we bought a software that can actually read all the invoices that come in through PDF and pull out all the relevant data and input it into our system. And then it would be ready for review. On the next slide, you can see that there are so many emerging technologies that are creating new marketplace demands and opportunities for our profession. That means we need the new skills to serve the organizations and the public. So these changes are reflected in the hiring trends as well. The information on this slide and the next slide comes from the AICPA Trends Report. And as you can see, hiring of accounting graduates had been slowing over the past few years. In 2018, firm hiring of accounting graduates was down 29% since 4 years before that. However, overall firm hiring has stayed relatively flat. So CPA firms are hiring fewer accounting grads and more non-accounting grads for professional positions. As a result, you can see that the number of non-accounting graduates make up 31% of new graduate hires in public accounting, an increase from 20% in 2016. That means we need to stay relevant, we need to keep the profession relevant, we need to keep the licensure relevant, and technological skills become a big part of it. So this is why NASBA and AICPA created the initiative called CPA Evolution. It is a joint effort. Dan and I are speaking to you together because AICPA and NASBA have been hand in hand for the last 3 years on this project. And the goal is to evolve how CPA licensure works to better reflect the skills and knowledge needed in the marketplace. A little bit of the timeline. NASBA and AICPA first shared this idea among stakeholders in early 2018. And you can pick Dan's brain about it because he was at the first meeting. So he knows all about how it all started, but there were so many reiterations of this model and so much feedback has been gathered since then. There were working groups formed, there were guiding principles that were developed for the new licensure. The two organizations revised the principles based on the feedback that they received from a variety of stakeholders, and they began drafting the new model. Finally, we have that model finalized. In the process, through the combined efforts of NASBA and AICPA, over 3,000, I think at this point it's 3,500 stakeholders gave responses. That's a fantastic response. We have heard from many different stakeholders. The feedback included 250 council members, 30 state societies, 300 state board members through NASBA regional meetings, 400 members in practice and industry who sent us their feedback. NASBA and AICPA held discussion groups with firms of all sizes. We met with the leadership of AAA and AACSB. We got the feedback from over 100 academics. There were numerous committees and meetings. They met with federal regulators and students. I will give you some of those results a little later. We also met with technology experts, CPAs working in business, non-for-profit, government, as well as the young professionals from various backgrounds. So what did we hear? There was a definite trend that emerged from that feedback. Overall, there was a strong support for the need to change licensure to keep it relevant for now and for the future. There was strong support for changes to the exam and education to place greater emphasis on technology. And there was common belief that our licensure model needs to position the CPA for the future while providing the needed skills to the profession and protecting public interest. NASBA and the AICPA also heard that any licensure model needs to build around a strong core of accounting, auditing, tax, and technology, because that's our bread and butter. The feedback said that education requirements should align with that core. NASBA and AICPA heard the experience requirement should be revisited to ensure they are supporting quality of assurance services. So all of that led us to focus on the new licensure model that needs to have a strong core, as I mentioned, accounting, auditing, tax, and technology. We will have additional requirements that align to that core. And we also have to keep in mind that the current CPAs need some help in retooling and upskilling where appropriate. Also, most importantly, NASBA and the AICPA heard that this initiative cannot be just about technology. The CPAs are asked to think differently now. The on-ramp for young CPAs is much shorter compared to what it was 20 years ago. So we need to put the profession in a position of strength. We need to approach a challenge with a different mindset. Dan, do you want to walk us through the next few slides?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Anna. You know, it was kind of interesting early on going through some of the meetings that served as the basis of really this initiative. At one point, there was a discussion among some of the leaders of the two organizations, and the fact that when they got licensed back in the 1980s, and that got us to go back and look at statistics. And you look at what's occurred, the body of knowledge for newly licensed CPAs has been growing rapidly. In 1980, we were still on FASB 34. And by the time the codification was done in 2009, we were already up to number 168. SAS 27 had just been issued, and we're now on SAS 137. And the tax code went from approximately 26,000 pages in 1984 to more than 74,000 in 2014. So you can see that the body of knowledge continues to grow. NASBA and the ACPA have heard from firms of all sizes, as Anna mentioned, that the procedures historically performed by newly licensed individuals are being automated, offshored, and performed by paraprofessionals. From tax returns being populated in service centers to audit confirmations being done by bots, the practice today is changing. The result is of this whole process is that the on-ramp for newly licensed CPAs is shortening. They're in fact reviewing work of others earlier in their careers, and they need to know more than ever. So we also heard that because practice is changing, newly licensed CPAs need deeper skill sets in certain areas. We need to demonstrate critical thinking and professional skepticism capabilities, and where we used to work around technology, understanding systems and controls and data are vital to the profession's future. All of this adds up to a dramatically larger body of knowledge. But the exam has stayed the same. We expect complexity to continue to grow from where we are today, meaning the body of knowledge is only going to grow, and we really felt we needed a different solution. So what we did was try to address the challenges we faced. We evaluated the feedback we received from stakeholders across the profession, and we also considered a variety of different licensure models from other professions in different parts of the world. One suggestion we heard was that the exam and curriculum should be revised to cover more content without removing what we cover today. This amounts to covering more material with less depth. The result would be watering down the requirements for licensure such that a given topic might have one question on the exam. Taking this approach would mean candidates would know less about what matters most. Given the depth of knowledge newly licensed CPAs increasingly need, we did not see this as a viable solution. Another suggestion that we heard was to increase the number of exam and curriculum hours. For example, we heard that we should consider adding a 5th section to the exam, or perhaps specify content beyond the current 24 hours in business and 30 hours in accounting. But we really felt that that approach would increase barriers to entry and certainly impact the pipeline of candidates choosing to become CPAs. but most importantly, growing the exam and the curriculum was not a sustainable approach in the long term. Our body of knowledge is going to continue to grow, and we can't increase the size of the exam or the curriculum every few years in response. So again, we felt we couldn't go that route either. Other models considered included CPA-audit, CPA-tax, but that approach would create wholly distinct paths to licensure for different types of CPAs. And the consensus really of the profession was that we should not splinter the credential by licensing professionals who don't have a strong common core. Another thing we looked at were two-tier models similar to CPA Canada, but we drew on past experience in the United States where that model had been used and concluded that it would make certificate holders, those who don't have a license, feel like second-class citizens. We also looked at the medical and the legal models. They tend to have greater education, greater experience, but again, looking toward other accounting related licensure models in other countries, we found that that has a significant impact on the pipeline as well. So again, we decided we couldn't go that route either. One of the things we did talk about in our thinking was the engineering model. And I don't know if you're familiar with engineering at all, but I'll just give you a brief overview. In engineering, when somebody graduates from their undergraduate program, they take the fundamentals of engineering exam. They then have a certain number of hours of practical experience that they take before they take their professional licensing exam down the road. It was an interesting model because everybody takes the same core fundamentals exam, but then they take different exams depending on whether they're going to be a mechanical engineer, a civil engineer, an electrical engineer. So we were kind of interested in the way that model would work. And so consistent with that approach, we came up with this idea of recommending a model, as Anna mentioned, that starts with a strong core, then accounting, audit, tax, and technology. But then each candidate would be able to choose a discipline in which to demonstrate the deeper skills they've learned. While the disciplines haven't been finalized, the three that we're currently looking at are tax compliance and planning, information systems and control, and business analysis and reporting. This model is responsive to the feedback we've heard from those 3,000 stakeholders, and it would build on that accounting, auditing, tax, and technology core and reflect the realities of practice today, requiring that deeper knowledge in one of the three pillars of the profession. The model is infinitely more flexible and adaptive than the current licensure model. We could certainly add disciplines down the road if the profession continues to grow and expand. But it also still results in one CPA license. There's not a distinction between whether you're a tax practitioner or an auditor or a technology consultant. Certainly, one license is where we really wanted to be. And then ultimately, public protection would be enhanced by this approach as well because it produces candidates who have a deeper knowledge necessary to meet the needs of clients and perform high quality work. One of the things that was interesting, last fall at the AICPA's Fall Council, they asked their participants to identify themselves whether they were members in tax, members in financial reporting, and members in audit and attestation. And what was interesting was that when they drilled down, the audit folks said that new CPAs should spend over 15% of their time on A&A, but the financial reporting professionals disagreed. They said that there should be much greater focus on advanced analytics, advanced accounting, finance, cost reporting. And then the tax folks thought that over a quarter of each candidate's curriculum and exam should be voted to tax. So you could see that it really was dependent on where the practitioners were. And it certainly told us that the CPA evolution model is reflective of practice as it exists today. Candidates who go down the tax path need to understand advanced taxation concepts. And candidates going into financial reporting need deeper understanding of advanced accounting, and analytics. So certainly this model is very reflective of where the profession is. I'm going to turn it back over to Anna, who's going to give us a quick overview of what we've heard from some of our stakeholders. Anna?
Thank you, Dan. My dog seemed to have rested while you were talking just to get more energy for a new barking adventure. But let me walk you through, I guess, candidates in academia, since I'm the senior manager of academic initiatives. So we were asked a question on how the new model would affect our pipeline. How would it be received by students? And we wanted to know whether the students were ready to pick a discipline, because CPA exam is focused on 1 to a couple of years out of school, or, you know, they start thinking about it in their junior and senior year, and whether the students would be interested in this type of model. And we surveyed over 600 accounting and non-accounting majors. So through the discussion groups with the students, through the surveys, we heard that the students often decide on whether to focus on audit, tax, advisory, or another area by the end of their junior year. And the survey we conducted backed this up. Of over 300 accounting majors who responded, as you can see, 67 had already selected a focus area, either through a learning track at their university or by accepting an internship or a full-time job. Another 23 had not yet selected a focus area, but would feel comfortable doing so. And only 10% indicated they were not comfortable selecting an area on which to focus. So overall, 90% of the students are telling us they're comfortable selecting a discipline. Next, we asked the students how the CPA evolution would impact their interest in pursuing the CPA. And what we heard was very promising. 47% of students said the CPA evolution licensure model would increase their interest in CPA. Another 33 said that they're already very interested in becoming licensed, and the CPA evolution would do nothing to dissuade them. So those diehards, no matter what we propose, they will be CPAs either way. 4% of respondents told us they're not very interested in CPA, and licensure under current model or the new model will not impact their interest. 16% said that they would be less interested in licensure under the evolution model. So we drilled deeper into those answers, and we discovered that the themes and responses indicate the lack of understanding of what is being proposed under this new model, and provides us an opportunity for further education. We have been conducting webinars for students as a result of this feedback. So overall, results point towards strong support from the pipeline. We also asked the non-accounting majors about their interest. And look at this, 50% indicated CPA evolution would increase their interest in CPA, with only 11% indicating their interest would decrease. The result among students majoring in information systems and data analytics were similar. 55% indicating evolution would increase their interest, and 14 saying it would decrease it. This is an indication that this model would help us keep a strong, healthy pipeline, but more importantly, that it will produce CPAs with the right competencies to meet the needs of the market. So then we were asked how this would change the hiring behavior. Would a candidate be pigeonholed into a chosen discipline? Well, the key tenet of CPA evolution is that candidates would not be limited to working in their chosen discipline. They would become fully licensed CPAs, capable of moving to new practice areas, just as CPAs can today. But some of the folks were worried that it would be a de facto limitation on CPA's ability to practice in new areas because of the discipline they passed. So to explore that, we reached out to hiring managers from firms with 50 or more personnel, including talent acquisition leads for the large international firm. What we heard was that disciplines would be treated much like a learning track in school. They said as CPA got more experience, the experience would become their primary hiring criteria, not the discipline. So it is just like it is today. Now we're going to talk about the impact on academia. How might it impact universities? So again, to study this, there was another advisory group that was formed with representatives from across the country, coming from community colleges, small universities, large state schools. We also formed discussion groups with small schools and HBCUs. We conducted a survey of educators that yielded over 150 results. We discussed with AICPA and NASBA education committees, and we met with the leadership of AAA and AICSB. The educators we heard from were largely supportive of the CPA evolution, and many saw this as an opportunity to grow their programs. We heard evolution would increase technology course offerings and accounting programs, which firms have told us is a vitally important skill to meet the market demands. We also heard that schools are likely to cover the core through their undergraduate program and cover the disciplines through certificates, graduate programs, and other avenues. Educators told us that the evolution would be a feeder into their master's programs, that it would improve the value proposition for those programs. Many larger schools said CPA evolution would present little to no change for them. In many ways, they're already ahead of the game because they have learning tracks that align with the disciplines that Dan outlined. Smaller school responses were mixed. We heard concerns about enrollment as students could pursue degrees at larger universities, which have the faculty to cover all three disciplines. They noted that they would be more likely to focus on one or two disciplines, similar to the approach of engineering programs, while partnering with other schools as needed. The biggest theme we heard from small schools is that they need resources to help them navigate this time of change. They asked us for model curricula that would help them map out courses, learning objectives, and syllabi to ensure students were well prepared for the CPA exam. And they also asked us for resources that they could integrate into their courses right now in order to prepare the students for the needed skills. Separately, we heard from firms that a model internship program developed collaboratively by firms and educators could help enhance consistency in this program while supporting the students' pursuit of the required 150 credit hours. I will mention that a little later. So now, to help support faculty who are working to integrate emerging technology topics into their courses now, we decided to develop the Academic Resource Hub with free tools for the faculty. It includes resources from the AICPA, from some of the Big Four, from Center for Audit Quality, and from some separate websites, and they would bridge the gap in the curricula. So now I'm very excited to report to you that that Academic Resource Hub was launched 2 weeks ago, and it has about 99 resources right now. And it has, so those resources, if it's an AICPA developed resource, it has the file that you can download and you can use. Most of them are cases for your classrooms. If it is developed by somebody else, it has a link, but you have an abstract. So this is like a centralized search database. It will direct you to Deloitte website or PwC website or Center for Audit Quality website, but you can search and sort all in one place. So I encourage you to check that out. It's on the website, This Way to CPA. Now, let's talk about the model curriculum. The 3 core sections of the new CPA exam will be defined by the practice analysis conducted by the AICPA exam team. And this process is just starting. So essentially the model that you saw that Dan showed, we pretty much good with the names, with the titles. What goes into each one of those sections, we can't decide in the vacuum. We're gonna go out and ask leaders of the practice, and that takes time. We had a lot of asks for model curriculum. So we are trying to work very hard to develop that model curriculum in lockstep with the CPA exam team. So as soon as they become clear on what goes into core tax versus discipline tax, we will be adjusting that model curriculum as well. So right now we have a task force formed to deal with the core curriculum. And we are starting our meetings right now, and we hope to create a high-level first draft of model curriculum by June 2021, and we'll continue developing it through 2023 when the exam starts. Now, we also created separate task forces for each one of the new disciplines, because frankly, I don't see much changing in the core. I think we already have a lot of it in our curriculum, but the disciplines will bring a lot of new material. And what is that new material? Again, AICPA and NASBA is not going to decide by themselves. They're going to go out to practice and ask what is needed. So that is the practice analysis tool. And as part of it, again, the task forces for the model curriculum disciplines will be working lockstep with the CPA exam as well. And we are hoping to get those drafted, at least the first draft, by June 2021. Now on internships, as I mentioned, we heard that there needs to be more consistency. In fact, we conducted a survey of students on internships, and there was such big disparity in terms of how many credit hours each person claimed for the internship. And in many cases, they did not claim any credit hours for internships. So we have another task force focusing on that. And we hope that they will study this issue and come up with some recommendations by spring of 2021. So now, Dan, would you mind discussing the impact on the exam itself and on the states?
Thanks, Anna. So what might the exam look like? We certainly still expect candidates would be tested at the 1 to 2 year level. The exam would be no longer than 16 hours, just like it is today, and there would be no new experience requirements to sit for the exam. While some folks we heard from had suggested a candidate should have required to gain multiple years of experience before passing a discipline, we've seen similar approaches taken internationally, and it results in a higher dropout rate and a diminished pipeline overall. So it just wasn't a place we wanted to go to. It'll continue to be a 4-section exam. Again, 3 core sections, and we envision the 1 discipline section. Sections can be taken in any order, and what we envision is that if somebody passes, for example, a core section that may focus on tax, something like Reg Today, if you will, then they may ultimately want to take that tax discipline if that's their interest, because they're already studying tax to some extent. So rather than take another core section, they may want to just stay in that tax area. And again, there's no separate time limits to pass the core versus the discipline. Right now, we continue to envision that they'd have 18 months to complete the exam, after passing the first section, just like they do today. How might the exam change? Certainly, the one is the difference in the way it's structured. You have the 3 core sections plus a discipline, a maximum of 4. Candidates won't have the option to pass additional disciplines. We've had that question a few times. You know, if you get through the 4 sections and you took the business analysis and reporting section and you want to also test yourself on the tax compliance and planning section, can you do that? And we've decided no. There are a number of reasons. One, this is a test of minimum competency. And once you've proven your minimum competency for licensure, that's it. 2, it certainly places the exam at greater security risk with respect to a greater number of individuals seeing exam questions. So again, we decided that once you meet that minimum standard of passing the 4 sections, that's all you need to do. All sections would cover discrete content in a range of skills, including higher order skills, just as they are today. And certainly, as Anna mentioned, when we talk to firms, discipline passed will not differentiate the license granted. A CPA equals a CPA. There's nothing that says that if you pass the exam and take the tax compliance and planning section as a discipline, that your career pathway couldn't allow you to end up through your experiences as an auditor or in the audit pathway. You would just need to have those competencies just as we do today in practicing the profession. With respect to the impact on states, we found that 8 states have requirements that they need to change their laws or rule. 1 state, Oklahoma, needs a statutory change, and 7 states, and they're listed on this slide, would need to have a regulatory change. There's an asterisk next to New York. New York Board of Regents passed an emergency regulation in July to make their amendment known. Again, these are all related to the exam because each of them still specifies the name of exam sections in their statute of rules. And because the exam sections will change with the evolution, they would have to change their statute and rules to comply with those new section names. Certainly the easiest thing is to go to the Uniform Accountancy Act model rules, which is a joint document maintained by the AACPA and NASBA, to see language that could be used that does away with those references to specific exam sections. With respect to education, substantial equivalency in the Uniform Accountancy Act is based on 150 hours of education, a bachelor's degree, and an accounting concentration or its equivalent. We don't see any proposed changes in those areas. Back in May, we did release an exposure draft, May 26, an exposure draft on proposed changes to the model rules. What we really tried to do is align the model rules from where a majority of the boards were today, making the model rules more consistent. So rather than trying to change the states to where the rules were, we felt that the states had adopted a lot of uniformity in certain areas that we should try to change the model to be more reflective of the majority. We certainly also recognized in those proposed rules the larger role technology plays in the profession. And also based on the education advisory group's work back in January, we also recommended an expansion of the number of hours that can be earned through internships from 6 hours to 9. Now, certainly we understand that a lot of academic programs are very tight on the number of elective hours that students can take. So it may not be possible for those 9 hours, but we did hear from that work group that was something that would provide greater flexibility for some. And then finally, we needed to clarify the role that accreditation plays with respect to licensing. Boards of accountancy certainly look at the types of accounting and business coursework that is taken, generally 30 hours in accounting, 24 hours in business. And the way the model rules were written, it focused solely on accreditation. And accreditation, as you know, focuses on the program or the school meeting its stated goals. So again, we made some proposed changes in that area as well. With respect to timeline, Back in May, the AICPA Council approved a resolution to support the CPA Evolution Initiative. NASB's board did the same and voted unanimously in support in July. As I mentioned, we proposed changes to the model rules in May. That exposure period ended on August 31st. And we're currently looking for the NASBA Board of Directors to consider those final rules by mid-October, in the next week or so. And that'll then allow us to start working with the states, the state boards, state societies, to look at possible changes to statutes and model rules. And also, as Anna mentioned, begin launching educator resources. And again, as she mentioned, we're also working on the exam. We have a bunch of task forces, and exam practice analysis is going to be starting. We're working on model curriculum, internship programs. One of the things that'll happen as we work through the practice analysis is the exam blueprint will be exposed for public comment. I will tell you, if you're not familiar with that, it's a great document that really provides a map of what is tested with respect to content on the exam and at what percentage and at what depth of knowledge. It's a great tool that can be used by educators and students. Certainly, we look to complete the statutory changes in 2023, and our goal is to launch the new version of the exam on 1/1/24. So that with that, we certainly covered a lot of material in the last 40 minutes or so. I want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to chat with you. And Paul, we'll open it up to any questions you may have for Anna or me.
Okay, great. Thanks, Anna and Dan. I appreciate it. 3 questions came in, and let me just hit these. If one of these folks would like to get more involved, who should they contact if they want to be involved in some of the task forces or some of the other groups that are either reviewing the exam or looking at the model curriculum? Sorry, go ahead and then I'll.
Okay, I would invite them to, I mean, certainly they can provide their information to you and you can forward it on to me or Anna. You know, you're more than welcome to share my contact information. Task forces have been created, but we're also going to have additional work groups that are going to be working over the next several months, multiple months. So we're always looking for volunteers. So that's great. So Anna or me, it's great. Just contact us and we'll make sure your name's forwarded to the appropriate person.
Okay. Second question on internships. Is there will the guidance include minimum expectations of what kind of substantive experience the folks should get for the 3, 6, 9, whatever the credit hours that might be assigned to an internship experience?
Anna, I don't know if you want to address that one. Based on that survey results we got, boy, it's going to be a tough road.
Yeah, essentially what we figured out that the whole system is just, there's no system. And the task force that is formed right now will be going through this. And what you're saying, Paul, is exactly their task. They're like, try to bring some consistency into that program and what kind of reporting you would need to do for the student to get the credit hours and things like that. So there will be a lot of discussions on their part before they come up with the recommendations.
I mean, I guess just a personal comment. I'm not sure this is a big issue in Michigan. I don't know, Michigan State, do you give credit for internships, or Wayne State?
I see Lynn nodding.
Lynn, do you have a comment?
Yeah, when I was listening with keen interest when you were talking about the internships, because at Michigan State, first of all, we only allow for a business degree up to 3 credits earned in internship. And then of course, when students go to get certified, the state doesn't, they allow the internship credit towards the 150, but it does not count towards the 30 accounting credits. So it causes our students, you know, so even though they can earn 3 credits, it doesn't help them with their accounting credits, but it does count towards their overall 150. Maybe that's something that the AICPA is already aware of, certain states having different rules like that.
Yeah,
We also, excuse me, we also limit the number of credits to 3. For accounting majors, it's not an issue because they have more than enough accounting credits. But for some, what you might call non-traditional students, the inability to count the internship towards the accounting credits or the specific, even business credits could be a problem.
Yeah, one of the things we did, again, we based some of these on the Uniform Accountancy Act model rules. And the model rules as written says you could take 6 hours of internships, 3 hours in accounting, 3 hours in business. And what we did by bumping that number up to 9 was say that it could be 3 in accounting, 3 in business, 3 toward the 150 hours. And jurisdictions are all over the map with respect to how they treat internships. And Michigan, certainly treats it one way, and there are other examples. One of the things we did early on, we did an analysis of internships, and some of the data we collected was that about half the states talked about internships in the rules, and was everywhere from 3, like you have in Michigan, up to 30 in another state, and all sorts of numbers in between. And that was only half the states. The other half either didn't allow internship hours to count at all, or they were silent on it, and the only way you could do it was to contact the board to find out what their policy was. So internships was really one of those things that was very inconsistent across the 55 licensing jurisdictions.
Huh, interesting. Okay. The last question that I've got up to this point, and this I know can go a bunch of different directions, and there's a lot of emotions on all sides, but the 150-hour requirement, any additional thought on ultimately changing that, or is there expected to be any more prescriptiveness to what the extra hours should be used for in the new accounting CPA model?
Yeah, there's no discussion about changing from 150 hours to back to 120, anything like that. When you think about the amount of content that's required and how things continue to grow, it's very difficult to suggest that can be attained in 30 hours of accounting and 24 hours of business within a 120-hour program. Anna and I were on a call last week where we had heard discussion about majors and minors, double majors, where typically baccalaureate students don't graduate with 120 hours. And with this group of educators we were on the phone with, they suggested that it's closer to 130 to 135 at the baccalaureate level to graduate through those programs. So I don't envision us moving away from 150 hours. With respect to the proposed model rules, the model rules today say that you need 24 hours of accounting above principles or introductory accounting. So essentially you need 30 hours of accounting taken from one or more of the following areas, content areas, and there's a list of about 8 or 10 of them. When we developed this model, one of the things we talked about was revising the model rules to say that you needed to have a course in financial accounting, which essentially is intermediate. You needed to have financial statement auditing, tax, and we felt a technology course, because if that's the core, if we're saying that's the core of the profession, then there should at least be some minimum coursework that should be taken in those areas. So when we drafted the model rule changes, we did make that change.
I could ask a question about that specific change, Dan?
Sure.
There's a requirement for 3 credit hours, which usually gets implemented as a separate course in the areas that you mentioned, but one of those areas is financial statement auditing. And one of the things that I didn't hear in your excellent presentation today was something that I've heard a lot in earlier discussions of CPA evolution, is that there's a thought that there should be less emphasis at the core level on professional standards, namely financial reporting standards and audit standards. Number one, didn't hear that today. And number two, I submitted a comment to NASBA about this requirement for a course in financial statement auditing, which sounds a lot like the auditing course included in most accounting programs, which at many schools today is not a required course. It's an elective course, and that imposes a constraint on the program.
Right. Again, they're the model rules. You know, it's really up to the boards of accountancy working with their state societies to identify what specific requirements they want in their jurisdiction. I understand what you're saying. I think the concern was, it's interesting, I just got this question Friday from a board because somebody wanted to know if they could count a course in fraud examination as an audit course. And traditionally, those two courses weren't seen as being, you know, the same, compatible. That the boards really tend to look toward that financial statement auditing, a more financial statement auditing course. And I think that's really because, you know, it's a reserved service for the profession. Only licensed CPAs can audit financial statements, so it was important that we acknowledge that that was a necessary part of licensure.
Okay, let me just open it up. I don't have any other questions in the chat room at this point. Any others? Folks, just feel free to unmute yourself and speak up if you have any questions.
Well, I still would want to return to the broader question, which neither presenter spoke to today. Is there still this feeling from the people who've been involved at the AICPA and NASBA that there should be less emphasis on professional pronouncements as we go into CPA evolution?
Well, I think part of that, Miles, will be, you know, dictated or guided, I guess is a better word, by the exam practice analysis. You know, that's going to be outreach to all sorts of individuals in public and private practice, in private industry, I should say, firms of all sizes, to identify the importance of various content on the exam, and should that content be at the core level, should it be at a discipline level? You know, so I think more's to come. We have the task forces set up on the 3 sections of the core plus the 3 disciplines, and certainly that's something we can make sure as we go through the process is discussed. I don't mean to put you off, but I don't have an answer for you today.
Okay.
And I'd be happy. Anna and I are sitting in on, I don't know, we're somewhere between 10 and 12 task forces, but I will make sure I take a note that when we meet that we have that conversation.
Well, you know, the reason I'm raising it is candidly, I think one of the reasons you got some of the results that you saw in the survey, if a student entering college today is interested in technology, typically accounting is not going to even be on their radar. They don't associate accounting with technology. And if you take a look at the structure of most accounting programs, I think we get a lot of students coming through our introductory courses today, bright students, they can do well. They get into debits and credits, they get into reporting standards. It's something they can put up with, but it's not something they really like. They really like the technology. They may really like the tax. So this is, to me, a very, very fundamental question that it's going to be a little bit difficult to proceed with curriculum changes without having you know, better understanding of what the trade-offs are supposed to be, particularly within the undergraduate program.
Right.
Okay. Let me just, looks like no additional questions at this point, so I will wrap it up by a couple of things. One, thanking Anna and Dan for presenting this afternoon. Secondly, if people do feel either they would want some additional information or they have a passion to help out, in my last 6 months or so working on some of the NASBA groups that I've worked with, they are looking for people who are interested in helping. They're very open to different opinions and taking in the input, and you really can make a difference if there's something that you think is either not being addressed or could be addressed in a different way. I'll say I came into a couple of the ethics committee meetings with a particular point of view, and I think once I heard maybe a broader context of small firm impact, big firm impact, and impact on individual practitioners, it kind of caused me to take a step back and rethink about some of the views that I had at that point. So anyway, I think that's all we have at this point. Thanks again for joining, and if there are questions for Dan or Anna, feel free to reach out or send me a note and I can forward them on. So have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks again for organizing this.
Thank you.
Thank you.